asserted. Humans often have sex when it's either unlikely or impossible for conception to occur during the wrong part of the ovulatory cycle, during pregnancy, after menopause. But most non-human mammals have sex that is very, very accurately timed to match ovulation. Human females have concealed ovulation. It's almost impossible for a male to detect directly the female's most fertile days. Interestingly, when many studies have been done on this topic, it's not clear that women are most interested in sexual intercourse during the pre-ovulatory, the fertile phase of their cycle. In contrast, most non-human females in the mammalian world advertise their impending ovulation with sexual swellings, specific odors, or stereotyped sounds or gestures, indicating sexual interest. Typically, neither males nor females will approach each other for sex during non-fertile times. So why have humans evolved such a distinct cluster of sexual behaviors that are so atypical? And the answer is this. The reason they have is because human children are uniquely helpless. Humans have by far the longest childhoods of any species. There's no other, I can see a mother in the audience who's saying, yeah, And there's no other animal where a 5-year-old can't make its own way in the world other than human. Why is that? Human brain is 400 cc's at birth, 1,200 cc's in adulthood. The human brain is growing at a massive rate from birth through the first 5 years of life, and at a much slower rate from age 5 to about age 20 or so. The human brain doesn't really finish maturing until about age 20, I'd say, looking around. So, what does this mean for our human mating system? Well, what it means is that whereas in many other species, the female can provide for the offspring by herself just fine. In traditional human societies, I'm not talking about the last 2 generations, a lot of technological and social changes that allowed women to live independently. But in our very, very recent evolutionary past, females alone could not provide for these helpless, giant-brained offspring of theirs. So, let's summarize by telling the story back in the other direction. Human brains are never designed from the ground up. Rather, as we've seen, new systems are added on top of the evolutionarily older ones below. This means that the brain must grow in size as it evolves new features. Even more important, the brain is made of neurons that haven't changed substantially in their design since the days of prehistoric jellyfish 600 million years ago. As a consequence, neurons are slow, leaky, unreliable, and have a severely limited signaling range. All you can do is go from 0 action potentials per second to about 1,200 action potentials a second. That's it. So the way to build sophisticated computation in the brain with these suboptimal parts is to create an enormous, massively interconnected network of 100 billion neurons and 500 trillion synapses. And this network is too big to have its point-to-point wiring diagram explicitly encoded in the genome. So let's talk about this, right? 500 trillion connections. They don't just happen randomly. There's a wiring diagram in the brain, right? Your eyeballs got to be connected to the place that's ultimately going to go to your visual cortex or your jaw. How do you specify all those connections in our little pokey DNA with, 22,000 or so genes? Well, you could say, oh, combinatorially you could do it. Everything that doesn't work at all. The answer is that you can't. It turns out that the wiring diagram of the brain is roughly laid down genetically. But at the finest level, the wiring of the brain is activity dependent. It is driven by sensory experience. And that sensory experience almost entirely precedes postnatally. So you're born with a 400 cc brain. You have to get to a 1200 cc wired up brain. You're not adding new neurons during that time. You are taking connections away and building others and sculpting the brain by experience. Your sensory experience in the world is wiring up at a fine level the connections in your brain. So, to me, this is the ultimate example of taking lemons and making lemonade. We have sucky processors. Our brain is built like an ice cream cone. It's agglomerative. It's just got to get bigger and bigger and bigger to get clever. What do we get out of that? Well, we get dominant cultural institutions like long-term care bonding. We get our individuality. Ooh. Where'd that come from? All right. So here's the thing. When you have the ability to have your experience in the world write permanent changes into your brain, that's not just useful for wiring up the brain in development, that's memory too, right? That's what you need to have your experience in the world write things into your memory, thereby conferring our individuality. So, sucky processors have given us love and memory. Now you might say to yourself, well, but you're sort of assuming too much culture, right? Monogamy. How many people are really monogamous? There are other cultures. Not everyone in our culture is monogamous. Here's the critical thing. It doesn't matter whether you go to a village in Papua New Guinea, or you go to Grand Forks, North Dakota, or New York City, or London. If you go to any of those places and you do a mass evaluation of paternity, and you say, is the woman's husband or long-term partner actually the father of the child? The answer is 98% of the time, yes. People aren't always monogamous, and they're often serially monogamous. But the crucial factor in terms of the assignment of paternity, which makes it advantageous for the male to stay around and contribute to child rearing, and what gives us our dominant social marital institution, is that in any given ovulatory cycle, most females are having a single sex. And that is how crummy neurons give us love. So now I've given you love, memory, and I promise dreams. So what about that? So memory is not, it's easy to think that memory is like a scrapbook. And you write memories in your scrapbook and then later you can flip and look at it. It's not like that at all. Memory is only useful when your experiences are continually cross-referenced and indexed and related to all the other things that have happened before, and when future experience can change what was laid down earlier. If you've only been to the beach once in your life, you're going to remember it very well. If you've been to the beach 100 times, your memory of time number 47 is very unlikely to stand out unless something unusually interesting happens. Memory is a dynamic system. How does all this writing into memory and cross-referencing happen? Well, part of it seems to happen during sleep. And the reason it seems to happen during sleep is because it's easiest to do it in the absence of competing sensory stimulation. It's harder to do during the day when all this other sensory information is rushing into you. So, there is good evidence that dreams are the byproduct of memory consolidation that is occurring in sleep. That things that have happened in the recent past are blended with your memories, and that those are somehow made into dreams. But, well, you might think to yourself, if that's all that's going on, if dreams are the smoke and not the fire, and the fire is memory consolidation, why do they make stories? Why are dreams narrative? Why are they bizarre? Why aren't they just like little flashes of information, discrete? Why are they bound together? So let's keep that thought alive. And I'm going to give you an exemplar dream to get us talking here. This is one from my journal. I'm waltzing with a beautiful woman in a vast space. The woman is not someone I recognize, but she seems to know me well. In some respects, the room where we're dancing is like a large ballroom, but it's also like a shop in my hometown that sold musical instruments, including many unusual ones from foreign countries. My dancing